Ariel Whitley-Noll with K-State Research and Extension, and I'm here with Chad from
Hi.
Premier Farm and Home. And today we're going to talk a little bit about weeds, specifically in the lawn, which is something we get a ton of questions at the Extension office about. So I know when we get questions, the thing we really say is a healthy lawn is the best prevention for weeds. What is a healthy lawn?
Yeah, so what we're looking for is a lawn that is taken care of, it has the proper density, is able to shade out its competition, and it's very good at that. That's part of the reasons why we keep lawns and not just have a whole bunch of weeds out in our front yard, is because grass can tolerate that mowing, and as long as it's kept thick, it can keep out those invaders, if you will, those other weeds that are around. And one of the ways it does that is by having enough height to be able to shade it out. So if we have a tall fescue lawn, we want to be able to mow between 3.5 to 4.5 inches. The lower you go, the more you mow, because it's going to grow faster in response to that shock, and it's also going to it opens up the canopy and allows for more weeds. The other key is fall fertilization. So by fertilizing in the spring, you're just going to force a lot of leaf and shoot growth. You're going to get a lot of leaf and shoot growth anyway, and what you end up doing is burning through that plant's reserve. So the only time to build a reserve is in the fall, and that also happens to be the time when that grass kind of spreads out or fills, and then that's also the time when your weeds germinate. So your grass is filling and expanding at the same time those weeds are germinating, and that's keeping them shaded out and keeping that healthy turf going.
So fall's the best time to fertilize. What about weed control in the fall?
So fall weed control is also probably the most overlooked time to go out and control weeds. Primarily because the weeds are very young. They just have germinated if we're dealing with like winter annuals. Dandelions have stopped flowering. They no longer look like they do now, where you have that nice little bright yellow flower, but they sit there as a very small rosette, and they're just waiting to bolt the next year and make these flowers. Now when they're at this stage, they're pretty hard to kill. So we'd much prefer to do it in the fall. Here's another example of a winter annual. So this is henbit. Now, last fall, that little plant may have stuck out there about this big and was sitting there gathering nutrients, and then it just explodes in the spring. And it's hard to kill when it's like this. It's easy to kill when it's like this. So an application of broadleaf herbicide in the fall can do that, or again, ramping up those cultural practices in the fall to prevent those weeds.
Absolutely. Well, fall's a good time to take care of these things, but not everybody gets around to it.
Right, it's true.
So if it's springtime, what can you do about these weeds?
So the disadvantage of spring, as we mentioned before, is you have all of this growth to try to produce seeds. And when you do that, the plant's not very good at taking in herbicide. It really is not focused on storing. It's not really focused on translocating stuff. So it makes it difficult to kill. So when you may have gotten away with something simple, like a 2,4-D or something like that, may work just fine in the fall. The cuticles of those plants are really thin. It's easy to take in that growth hormone. It's wanting to grow. Most of our herbicides are growth hormone mimics. But in the spring, you may have to pull out a little bit bigger gun. So something like Triamec that has 3 different herbicides, 2,4-D as one, also has something called MCPA and dicamba. So those 3 mixed together really seem to do a little bit better job on these tougher to kill weeds by being able to be absorbed in the shoot and in the leaves. So it's multiple ways to get in. I always have this one available if this is for people who are frustrated and just want it to be gone right away. Speed Zone, just like the name says, works extremely fast. It has the ester formulation of 2,4-D, which I like over the amine salt formulation in the spring, because it works a lot better and it gets into the plant easier. And it has something called carfentrazone in it, which actually is a burn down. So it has a really cool mode of action where it actually burns those weeds right down in a day or two, as long as it's applied over 50 degrees and it's really nice sunny day. Sunshine is actually what activates and makes that plant burn down. One other thing to note is that a lot of these plants, especially these annual plants, can be really fuzzy. They have this kind of like covering or coating on the outside of them, and so that herbicide will almost tend to beat up or not really get down to the top. So treating the water with some sort of spreader sticker or a non-ionic surfactant is the way to go. You can greatly increase your herbicide's effectiveness and help it get into the plant, because it's actually going to be touching the weeds that we want to control. Yeah.
That's great. So you mentioned the temperature that specifically Speed Zone needs. Where do you find that information?
So if you look on each one of these things, you'll find on the back, you'll find this label, And labels can be a little confusing to read, but I know a couple of people here that would be happy to work with you through these labels and help you put down the appropriate rate. Glugs are not a measurement. We don't just go and try. You're going to end up wasting your money, or you're going to waste your time. Either way, it's not going to be a good thing for us. So if you need help going through these labels, you're able to find the temperature limits. So they may say, do not apply over 95 degrees. They may say, do not apply under 50 degrees. So you can find those temperature ranges, also wind limits, those sorts of things in this herbicide label.
That's great. I know a lot of the questions that we get at the Extension office specifically about herbicides and pesticides, the information is right there on the label. So definitely, I would say don't get rid of those containers. Hold on to it because it's got a lot of great information.
Matter of fact, you're required to keep them with the container at all times, just to make sure that we don't forget what we're doing.
Absolutely. So when you're looking at what chemicals to apply specifically for these weeds, is there anything you should avoid for your lawn?
Right. So a lot of times there are some marketing out there that will lead you to believe that you want to spray certain ones in your yard that you shouldn't. One example of that is I would stay away from anything that says like kills all, or bare ground or whatever, anything describing, just total decimation. It's not just the weeds, it's also your yard. So what these do, these herbicides are what we call non-selective. So they will destroy anything that they come in contact with, unlike your selective herbicides that are designed to be put in the yard. So the whole goal is to keep your healthy lawn that you like and get rid of the weeds. If you get rid of the lawn, trust me, the weeds will come back faster than your lawn will, and you'll be no better than you were before. So just be careful, and if you need help, feel free to call in to the extension or to me. We're happy to help you identify those.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Chad. And if you have any other questions about weeds in your lawn or anything else, feel free to reach out to Chad here at Premier Home or myself at K-State Research and Extension. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. That completes it, right? We're done.
Yeah, that was good.
All right.